time to begin. Geeta, shall we begin?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we can.
Okay. Very good evening to all of you. Welcome to yet another Saturday's discussion. This week we are discussing Ex Libris New York Public Library 2017. The film was suggested by Basav Biradar, who will initiate discussion on the film today. It's a long film, but also very interesting and engaging one. So thanks, Basav, for asking us to watch the film. Basav Biradar is an independent researcher, writer, and documentary filmmaker. Also, I must say he's not really someone whom TFO does not know. We had earlier watched one of his documentaries, and he was part of the discussion on his own documentary on KGF. He often writes on cinema, theatre, history, and heritage. He teaches courses on cinema and theatre as a visiting faculty at Azim Premji University, Bangalore. His essay on the Virupaksha temple in Hampi was published as part of an anthology on temples by Westland, the unfortunate Westland, I think. So welcome, very warm welcome, Basav, again, this time as discussant, initiator of discussion on this, film, documentary film that you've asked us to watch, and it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So my book published and Westland shut down. And looks like today's film also didn't attract many participants. Nevertheless, I think I was very curious. I mean, I wanted to, I'm a big fan of Frederick Wiseman, so I wanted to share this film with everyone. To begin with, I just wanted to start with a very personal anecdote. About 15 years ago, when I first went to US and started living there, I remember that someone told me that, these local libraries are free and they will have these, DVDs of movies and very good films, you can foreign cinema and even American cinema, of course. So that's how I visited. And there, as I was, collecting the films and checking them out at the counter, one old middle-aged, very immaculately dressed middle-aged lady came to me and said, hello, looks like you're very new to the neighborhood, to our library. Do you want to be part of our book club? And coming from India, these kind of things are very surprising for us. And I was like, yeah, I like to read, so I didn't know that there was a book club, etc. She said, yeah, we have a book club and we very actively recruit members, especially people who are new to America, etc. So, and I really enjoyed that engagement. They would give us same book to all the book club members, so they had so many copies of each book, and we would discuss at the end of the month. And that is where I first watched, borrowed and watched Titicut Follies. Titicut Follies is a film by Frederick Wiseman. He made it in 1967. And that film was on, inmates of a insanity home, criminal insanity home in the US. And that was extremely shocking that, a film could be made like this, where, he had just filmed these people who are not mentally capable and they're living in this home, and how the state treats them. And it was really very moving in ways. And of course, I was surprised by the freedom and access filmmakers in America would have to make such a film on a state-funded institution. So with this background, and that is where my first fascination for Frederick Wiseman's work started. And since then, I think I've watched all of his films, and most of them I purchased also, because I didn't want to download only these two latest films, which is one is this Ex Libris New York Public Library, and another one which he made in 2019 on it was titled Monrovia, Indiana, which is a film on a small village in Indiana, the state of Indiana in the US, which is also a wonderful film. And maybe if the if we have some time later, maybe we can watch that as well. So coming to this particular film, I mean, I don't know if all of you have watched it, but it is focused basically on study of is focused basically on the New York Public Library as an institution. So the film looks at or examines the institution's functioning and its various facets, or at least tries to in entirety. Right, and the film, as if you have watched, you'll see that it opens with this very nice conversation which is going on between Richard Dawkins and one of the library's employee in the atrium, which is the main hall of the main building of New York Library, the main branch building, New York Public Library is on Fifth Avenue, which is a very iconic building, and it's happening there. And he's talking about independent thought and how people who don't believe in religion should also be respected as much as people who believe in religion, and how thinking about independently about these things is important. And as an author, I think many of you will be familiar with Richard Dawkins. And that's where it starts. And there, very interestingly, it cuts to this, very quiet couple of clerks working next to each other within the library. And one clerk, funnily, is answering if the Gothenburg Bible is available or not. And this second clerk, even more funnily, is answering a question about existence of unicorns, which is a very funny way to, allow us into the film, into the library building. And then from there on, it moves on from one part of the library to another in the main branch, as well as in the sister branches across the town. I think there are about more than 90 branches of New York Public Library across the city of New York. And I think in the film, he only has shot about 12 or 15 of them. I don't remember the exact number, but not more than 15 for sure. And that's what he does. So, and it's very interesting because it kind of slowly it reveals to us the function of the library, the role of what all kind of functions it serves, like book events, discussions, even job expos, right? And even recitals like piano recital that is shown. Then there is also classroom where a subject is being taught seriously. The American labor history is being taught seriously. Then there are book clubs which are discussing Marquez's novel Love in the Time of Cholera. And then there is also there's a dancing club, looks like, for old people to keep physically active. Then there are conversations around rights and policies for disabled people, and awareness programs basically. So there is so much seems to be happening in the library from a perspective of no education, of course, and also in the perspective of civic awareness, right? Which is very, very interesting for us to see, especially sitting in India with probably no public institution enabling these things for us, right? And I think at some point, the lady who's speaking, I think the Francine or someone, the European lady of the library expert who says that how library is not just a storage for books, and it is not at all about books. It's actually about these people who come to the library seeking knowledge and how we can enable it. And that is that seems to be the sort of the main thought behind at least how New York Public Library is run. And that's what we learn with different aspects that is shown. What is interesting, I also feel, from a perspective of this aspect, is that when we see the scenes which are interviewed or intercut with the scenes of the events, etc., there is scenes of the administration meetings which are very revealing. Hats off to the access the filmmaker has. They are also very revealing because they are also revealing to us how the institution is funded, which is public and private both. Then of course, if you go and research, you will realize that Andrew Carnegie was one of the founders, and even the building name, which has now become the Steven Schwarzman building, because he donated from $300 million in 2008. I mean, that's also stunning, because that kind of philanthropic donations from businessmen in India to libraries is probably unheard of, right? And Schwarzman donated in as recent as 2008, and that's why they had to put his name on the building. And very interestingly, in one of the shots, I think clever shots, you can see Schwarzman's name against Thomas Jefferson's quote or something like that. So it's very interesting that way. Those things are also there about budget discussion, but there is also discussion about how the library is facing this challenge of digital. They don't really seem to, I mean, they're trying to get a hang of how to implement this policy of digital inclusion. One woman particularly advocates for how digital inclusion is not just about giving internet access or internet devices to people, but also to handhold them or educate them towards how they can efficiently use internet, or how they can engage critically with internet, instead of just streaming something, watching something on TV on the internet, right? So that's that's a very clear challenge, because that keeps recurring in multiple conversations. There is also conversation about ebooks, and how ebooks seem to be more in demand, so how they can address that problem, because there is problem of license which has to be bought with the writers, etc., and the publishers, of course. So this problem of this changing digital life is really evident, and how they are trying to tackle it is also, I think, what the film wants to focus on, in a way, right? And of course, there is while, I mean, my reading of the film is that as these very concrete, practical aspects of running the library are shown to us via these discussions with the administration, with all of the people discussing over money, budget, policy, etc. There is also this very interesting juxtaposition of events which are very different, like Patti Smith's event. And Patti Smith is a very famous author, and what she is talking about. And then there's Elvis Costello's event. And then there's also a conversation about race through one of the books, which is also, kind of, that juxtaposition also very interesting. It's like almost showing us, the means and the result in a way, right? So the two different, one is behind the scenes and one is directly to us, kind of a thing. That juxtaposition is something I really liked. I also liked the different collection that the film showcases. It kind of is almost like a profile of the library, of course. So it shows its art collection, print collection, photography collection, and how they work with schools and drama schools, and to engage with these archives and scholars, of course. And then we also, at certain point later in the film, it goes on to the infrastructure part, where the film slowly reveals to us the number of scanners, the labeling, the whole the labor involved in keeping the catalog and digitizing of the artifacts in the library. So I think structurally it kind of starts with the function, then goes to administration, then goes to infrastructure, and administration is like the thread tying it through, because it discusses all these issues in terms of the practical aspects. Of course, the Harlem branch thing at the end is very, very interesting, I feel, because I think it's the smallest branch in the city of New York, hardly like a small room. And the most difficult, because they have always been struggling to get people there, which is a very lower class neighborhood, to engage with the library and the collection in the library. And there, very interestingly, the conversation about Tata McGraw-Hill textbook, and how the story of the history of African Americans in the American textbooks is misrepresented, surprisingly, for 9th grade textbook, and how the library can sort of, he says, the library can teach you the truth to your children, so please send them to the library. So it's very interesting revelation of course, the issue in the American textbook world, but it's also of how the library advocates, their functions to attract people to the library, right? So this, apart from this, of course, I just wanted to maybe touch a little bit on the functional, the making aspects, because Wiseman is known to have a very distinct style of documentary making, which has catapulted him to the top. He's one of the most famous documentary makers of our time. He's now in his 80s. So some features of his filmmaking is very much, one is that the focus is on a certain institution, whether it's a family, whether it's a public institution, or in some cases private institution. For example, I think some of his earlier films, he made a film on the Berkeley University, which is called At Berkeley. Then Titicut Follies, as I said, is on the insane home, criminal insane home in somewhere in the northeast of US. And then he made film on healthcare. He made film on one of the suburbs of New Jersey, I think. So all of these films were just kind of focused on one particular place or one particular institution. So the curiosity, Wiseman's curiosity, seems to stem at how people, or how human beings, we interact with institutions and state systems and rules and regulations, and how we interact with them. So it kind of looks like it's his area of interest of capturing these interactions, right? And most of these films, there is also a film called Gym. It's on a gymnasium, boxing gym. Yeah, correct. It's called Boxing Gym. It's just on a gym, but it's amazingly interesting. I mean, anybody, if you hear of it in the beginning, it might feel like, okay, what would a film about just a gym where the camera never goes out of the gym reveal, right? But it somehow he somehow seems to be able to sculpt a very interesting film, which is revealing of the people involved in the institution or the institution itself, and the class hierarchies, all these American societal issues somehow come out in the sculpted version of the film that he's finally able to come out. In terms of form, he never does voiceovers, so there are never voiceovers or information titles in his films. And there is never an interview either. I mean, there is never a straight direct interview. So as you would notice in this film, it's almost like we are transported, we are put into this library in each room, and we are just observing, whether it's the concert hall, whether it's the atrium, or it's the corridors. We are looking at the corridors, then we are going into behind the scene in the clerical space, in the meetings. So it's almost like we are being taken there just to observe. So it's very famously, this method is called observational filmmaking, which Wiseman made very famous, with one of the inventors of this form. And what I find interesting visually and sound wise is that, which is also evident in this film, is that he's very interested in faces, right, of people. So in almost every sequence in this film, you will see that he captures reactions, like portraits of each face, or most of the faces in the audience who are watching this event, or participating in a discussion. So it's almost like reaction shots, what we call, but it's like montage of one after another faces, which kind of allows, I guess, it allows us to think of their viewpoint, or spend more time understanding what the discussion, how the discussion is going on in the class. It's almost like sitting in a classroom and watching the reactions of students, right? So that's another very interesting style of faces. And in this particular film, the what might seem like a very boring methodology of transitions, where he keeps like punctuating each section or each sequence with the footage of the traffic, uh, is very interesting, I feel, because it's a sound play, in the sense the traffic footage always is this noisy, with ambulance going or a fire engine going, and New York being a big city, of course these noises extremely, the streets are extremely noisy, and he immediately cuts to the peaceful interior. So it's almost like telling you another of the NYPL's facility, where it is it's so peaceful compared to the streets outside, right? And he himself records the sound, which is very interesting. Weisman edits himself, records sound himself. Only thing he doesn't do is camera work, but the rest of it is all him. And many of the times, very interestingly, it's a style I also use. Weisman never writes scripts for documentaries, films of his for his films. Um, so he doesn't know what his film is going to be. So he goes and films for a certain period of time, the institution. So for this, I think, for example, this film was shot continuously every day for 3 months, so about 90 days of footage. 90 days of footage they had of shooting from morning till evening or even late evening. So they just spend each day there filming, and then the film actually emerges in the edit. So it's massive amount of footage, which is then culled to a certain time uh, uh, length in the film. This one, of course, is what might conventionally be considered long, but I don't know if you people have engaged with anthropological films, which is a genre I admire quite a bit, like films of Judith McDougall, David McDougall, J.P. Sniadaki, and even some in India as well, like Rahul Roy. Many of them are very long films. Like David McDougall made 4 films on Dune Schools, for example, on Dune School rather, and each of them are like really long films. But they are anthropological studies, so they are meant to be a detailed uh, film, but also equally engaging as Weisman films, right? So that was a little bit about the form and style. I think in terms of he also made sorry, I just want to reading my notes here. So he also made a film on the Central Park. He just went and put his camera in Central Park, and it kind of reveals how Central Park, how people in New York engage with Central Park, which could also be a great film, say, if you make that about Cubbon Park in Bangalore, for example. Provided we get that kind of access where nobody's bothering you if you're filming and putting restrictions, etc. Right? The New York Times has this to say. I just kind of took out a snippet of his profile that they had written. Over many decades, Mr. Weisman's great subject has been institutions, places that he once loosely defined as having certain kinds of geographical limitations, and where at least some of the people have well-established roles. He's particularly sensitive to the ebb and flow of humans inside these places, and unsurprisingly, given his documentary's focus, he is very attentive to given his focus, he is very attentive to the sounds of this flow of people in certain place. So another thing about sound is there are never additional sounds, in the sense that there is no recorded music or music which is composed specifically for the film. The sounds that are used are all which are in the environment of his filming. Like in this case, in this film, for example, it's either the sounds of the computers or the mobile phone messages, or a baby crying in the auditorium, or the traffic. They're all sounds which are actually happening where he's filming, and so he doesn't edit out that baby crying sound when the spoken word poetry performance is going on. He doesn't edit out, because that kind of is also adding to what that footage is. You almost feel like that intense spoken word poetry performer will flip because, or will get disturbed by this baby crying. And it's very odd to have anyways a baby in such kind of a performance, so that's also kind of adds to the film. So he doesn't record any additional sound or use additional sounds at all. So there is no composer on the film, there is no mixer, etc. So it's a very simple approach in many ways, but I think the editing is the key in the form of his film. On the other note, I also wanted to talk a little bit about how this film for us, I think it should be shown in India quite a bit, just to understand that how much of our awareness of public institutions is less. And also our in the sense that we are not really worried about commons in our urban places, right? We are not worried about how uh, the state almost seems to constrain public use of public property through extremely unthoughtful laws and rules and regulations. And especially if you look at the library system, I did a profile of all the libraries for a newspaper in Bangalore, most of the libraries, at least most of the popular libraries. And during that time, I did some research, and it was very interesting to see that many of our state-funded public libraries do not
सर गरम
actually
सिगरेट है
do not
कितना
actually there is buying cigarette. But uh,
I've muted him. Sorry.
no, it's fine. Uh, so how the city library, for example, the main library in Kaban Park, which is a very beautiful city central library of Shashadri Memorial Hall in Bangalore, for example, they are supposed to order books every year. So they're supposed to make a list, order books every year, order even audio CDs, DVDs, etc. But if you ask them, they'll tell you they haven't done so in decades. But there seems to be no. What is interesting, I feel, is the apathy by us, as in the civic society itself, who are not worried about these libraries, because I think mainly middle class and above in India, we just go and buy books if we want to. We don't really engage with libraries unless it's for research. We are it's our work demands it, like going to archives, etc. And even in archives, like in this film, you'll see those guys being so patient and empathetic, especially in the Chinatown branch, where they are teaching. Even despite the language differences, they are showing so much patience and empathy towards this the Chinese patrons of theirs, and teaching them. And when the lady is searching for the Herman Herzog's lineage, and he's helping her by narrowing down the search, etc. But I don't know about many archives, but I've been to few in India, and it's not such a pleasant experience at all. So these things seem to be. It's very interesting that we are. We are okay with it, in the sense that we always think that we have to bribe the librarian, and it is okay to kind of do all this, despite knowing that the library is for us and the archive is actually for our use, right? So these maybe it's a first world, third world, or developing world versus developed world comparison, but the apathy is striking, and this film is quite revealing, especially at least of New York. May not be interior US, I am not so sure, but still from my experience, I feel even interior libraries there are good, and that the system itself it's NYPL is very famous, and even Patti Smith is ready to come there, or Richard Dawkins is ready to come there for an event, is only because they have nurtured the cultural discourse and defined it many times in the New York City for such a long time. And that is very revealing. And I think this film kind of makes that point, that how it is just not a knowledge center, but it is also this cultural center, which is at the forefront of the discussing various issues, contemporary issues, and allowing a very democratic form of cultural discourse to emerge and shape uh, in its premises and through its premises across the city and through its many centers across the city as well. That I find is again a very, very interesting revelation, and that's something, if you think of it, we don't really have such public institutions where there is in India to kind of have this kind of engagement. And so whatever engagement we'll have, intellectual engagement, that becomes a very exclusive depending on if we are able to afford it, or like, for example, this India Habitat Center, Bangalore International Center, etc. They're free, but they're really, almost exclusively visited and patronized by a certain class of people. There is no proactive encouragement to, bring in people from different classes and different neighborhoods, even in fact from neighborhoods that these institutions are located in. So that's a little stunning, and I think that's also a hat tip to how American institutions run, because their first focus is always the immediate neighborhood, which is very interesting. Of course, they are not perfect. I'm not saying that, but far better than the situation we are in. I think this is pretty much it. I don't really have anything much to add to this, and I don't really wanted to show clips or anything, because it's better to hear more voices and discuss, is what I felt.
Thank you very much, Basav, for laying out so many issues. First, with regard to the kind of films made by Frederick Wiseman, and a whole range of issues after that, including the last point that you made about the need for such films to be shown widely. Because I too was thinking precisely along these lines while while I was watching the film, that this sense of this what Tocqueville talks about as the civil society, composed of associations, which are in some ways the bedrock of democracy. So it's not like just a political thing that is decided by votes, but these kinds of associations that are nurtured by and within neighborhood communities, interest groups of various kinds. I thought this film is fascinating. I mean, if there's anything that tells you about American institutions, and not as something from above. Democracy is not something from above, but something that works through such institutions. I thought this film does that remarkably well. Yes, it's a tad too long. I saw it over 3 days. And in fact, the point that you made about the traffic, breaks were also in some ways the breaks that we took while watching the film. So yeah, really, really wonderful in the way in which around a library, so many different kinds of activities, and also the thought about who it is for. It's proactively done. So I thought some of these really came across wonderfully well in the film. Anyone who wants to come in at this point to talk about the film? Yes, Geeta, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Nikhila. Thank you, Basav, for asking us to watch this film, because I'm not too sure I may have seen it, without being made to see it, considering the length of the film. I too, like Nikhila, saw it in 3 installments. But I'm really grateful to you for suggesting this film, because apart from the tons of information that the film gives you about how the library system works in America, I thought the way the film was structured was very interesting. And as you have already mentioned, Weidman, being an editor himself, the way he has alternated between the traffic scenes and the library scene, apart from the audio effect, like the noisy street and the quiet library. I think it also that structural regularity in the film, because this is it is maintained throughout, all the 3.5 hours you have this alternating traffic and library scene. And that structural regularity is something that points to a thematic unity also, in the sense that the library, we generally associate libraries with a space where only, a book lover or a student who is forced to go there to use it would go. But this is a place where all kinds of people go, even, lots and lots of children, and they're not necessarily reading there. They're also, playing with those, making those robots and playing and all of that. So that points to the publicness of the library, which is reflected in those streets or in the scenes of the street. So in a way, the library is as public and as democratic as the streets of New York.
Yeah, and good points. And to go a little bit deeper, even the traffic, they are also signs. He actually shows the street, so it is telling you which branch he's going to go now. Right? And based. So I didn't want to talk about it because it's probably, us may not relate to it so much because we don't know the street name so well. But and also, he puts a portrait of the name of the branch, for example. So it's like a street shot, then name of the branch, and then goes inside. It's like very much a very traveling kind of thing, using this traffic montage. And also come every time he comes back to the main branch, again the street signs are showing Fifth Avenue, and it's there, right? So it's there. The other thing that you talked about is very interesting. For example, the conversation, I just wanted to before I come to your point, what Nikhila ma'am said about the conversations of community. One of the most striking sequence I feel is the conversation when the African American adults are talking in a library branch, and where he explains of how his mother lost business, because of all the the prices going up, etc. What is very interesting is, the conversations in this library seems to be somehow the library forces people to listen to each other, to kind of give space to talk, which otherwise in the world we live in currently, especially, it's very difficult to have these meaningful conversations where one is listening to each other, especially in a unstructured kind of place, like where a good bunch of strangers are sitting together, right? But this library seems to enable that. You can see it in the disability, this one, even in the job expo, this one sequence, and in this black people sequence in the last one, as well as this one. So that is something I think. And with respect to people visiting, your point, there was also many shots of tourists, and even I have been to this library as a tourist, to click pictures inside, on the stairs, because of course it's a magnificent building, and so there are so many shots again of tourists clicking selfies and photographs, which also is, it's not only this library with and you'll be surprised, you can actually walk in to this library. Any tourist can walk in without any restriction, which I don't know in Indian libraries if it's even possible. So which is very interesting. I thought that they would stop us and say, you can't come in because it's library, right? You think that, okay, they don't want tourists and noise, etc., but it's not like that. They allow you to go in and walk around, take pictures and all that. So which I find is again a very public access point conversation. Again, one more point in the film which brings out this public part is the conversation around homeless people, when they're talking about how homeless people come in and sleep in the library and what should they do about it, which is a very interesting conversation. And I find it very interesting that they very empathetically talk about it and they discuss it. So, which is again very fascinating, and talks about it as a melting pot not only of culture, knowledge, intellectual, intellect, etc., but it's also of these smaller things of homeless people, children coming for babysitting centers in the library, and the science centers, which are basically to keep children engaged, are all, kind of services which we should be expecting from state, it sounds like. Yeah.
Okay, Geeta, you want to come in?
No.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, Tarkeshwar, yes, please go ahead.
I thank you, Basav, for suggesting this film to be watched for this week. As Geeta said, otherwise, I don't think we would have watched it. And I more or less agree with the lessons that you were drawing for us means quote unquote Indians at this point of time. But I also have a slight a divergent view on that. In India too, we had institutions which were modern in the true sense that because they were operated rationally. So just to give an example that the best way of discussion of running an institution that has happened is Bangalore Social Science Forum in the 90s. When it began, so Bangalore Science Forum was there in National College, run by EX Libris. So there was nothing for social sciences. So finally, EX Libris conceded to have a Bangalore Social Science Forum. So when it began, I was one of the lab members then. So we used to have annual general body meetings. So it was more or less patronized by the National College, but it was also membership owned, and then only the infrastructure was provided by National College. So the members had a right to discuss the annual budget and the way it is growing or not growing, where it is going and things like that. Especially when the financial matters came, even for 1 rupee, 2 rupee, there used to be a lot of discussion. Whether it was proper to spend it or not, and why did you spend it, why you have not accounted for it. Especially 70s and 80s year old men from Basungudi, the way they used to nitpick and argue patiently, and then the office bearers trying to explain to them and things like that. I said, this is how an institution should work, on rationality. And also about the donation, building the institutions. If you look at many of the, even the public institutions in Bangalore, the land is donated by somebody else. So if we have the names of those donors on the schools, they've donated 5 acres, 10 acres to build a, so it's a public-private partnership. So we also add, how should I call it? These enclaves of modernity in India. So it was not pervasive, but we had these enclaves of modernity. And as you said, in the case of Bangalore International Center, which is actually a post-Tarkeshwar phenomena in Bangalore, because when I was in Bangalore, it was not there. So these are exclusive enclaves of a particular educated people coming from, as I said, Basungudi. So others were not so welcome there. In a sense, they looked upon others as lumpen elements. But they had these enclaves of modernity, which ran the institutions according to the principles of rationality. So in that sense, we had these institutions, but today we are abandoning them. Even when you come to library, I have spent most of my time my teenage and adulthood in libraries in Bangalore. So the city central libraries in various of Bangalore, I knew them. I had membership in 3 city central libraries, and then Indian Institute of World Culture, college libraries, British Council Library. So in that sense, we also had this culture. See, especially in city central library, wherever I go, whenever I go, there used to be people mainly coming to read newspapers and periodicals, weeklies, monthlies, and also read books, become members and take it home. And we also had circulating libraries. So what we see as the science of modernity did exist in these uh, in India too. But somehow with the last 25, 30 years, the culture that we are seeing is something different. There is an anti-modernity wave which is pervasive. I don't know how to understand it. Yes, it is true that we have to learn a lesson from this documentary, how to run modern institutions, how to argue or discuss rationally and take it forward, building the institutions, and make that institution as part of the neighborhood. So all these things we need to learn, but it is not completely true that we didn't have it. So we had this enclaves of modernity. It was not pervasive, that's a different issue. That's the point I wanted to make. And the second point I wanted to make was about the film per se. Yes, they might have taken 3-4 months to shoot the footage, but some of the meetings and discussions, I thought they were reenacted for camera. Not all the talks and things like that, but especially the management meetings. So some of them might have coincided with the time period of the shooting too. So they might, but the audience were aware that it is they were being shot, because most of the in these discussions there's no argument. Somebody proposes something and others more or less accept it. So the heated debate and argument that I have not seen. I think that is the true hallmark of a running a modern institutions on the principles of rationality, because it has to be a collective endeavor. I didn't see that, but though there is a meeting, everybody participating in it, more or less somebody proposes it, others quickly fall in line. It looked like maybe it was shot for the camera, not everything, but a few of the, especially the meeting point. And this institution, compared to the our libraries, even though some of them are good and things like that, as I said, but this particular library, apart from the vast collections and the various sections and addressing the local community, it was almost like a community college, not just a library in that sense, what we today call as community college. So that was the thing that I thought one point. And the second point was this was also more or less about when we are raising questions about physical libraries. That issue also comes up in the discussion there, that they're going to disappear because now we all depend on archive.org and libgen and whatnot, and also ebooks. So pirated editions of the ebooks which are available freely. So libraries are gone. So as you said, in India too, we don't see this kind of library culture much now. Reading outside of your syllabus, that has completely gone out, I think, in India. So there also there might have been discussions, and they are thinking seriously how to make it relevant. That point, some of our librarians should pick it up. I think showing this film in our library science departments while training the MLib candidates, that should be made mandatory, I would say. Or if there are any such other documentaries, that should be made part of the curriculum in library science. So that's all I would like to say at this point. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I meant the same. Actually, there are many more institutions for sure in India. For example, even the whole KV Subarna Neenasam institution, which has lasted so long, now it's not as active and relevant now, but there was a time when there was active cultural movement with even as we know, Hegodu residents being involved in it, and intellectuals like Anantamurthy and even many foreign intellectuals engaging with that institution, right? But what I meant is, I think in the contemporary time, like you said, in the last, I think of it, my theory is post-economic liberalization, our institutions have really declined, public institutions. My main theory is that because of apathy of middle class, because we don't seem to be using it anymore, any of these public institutions. For example, I'm also a member of Indian Institute of World Culture, which I still go to, basically to pick up New Yorker or some of the books which I might need to refer. For example, they have a lot of Deccan old history books and art history especially. So those I still go there, and not only world culture, but there is also Gokhale Institute in Basargudi, which was also very active. I'm sure when you were growing up in Bangalore, but now again, if you go and visit these, you'll only see some young students who don't have places to sit and study using them. Same with city rental libraries. I think my point was more to say that they have not been modernized, in the sense, I think in one of the meetings in this film, I think the Asian woman talks about how they need to keep innovating, so that when they ask for budget, they need to tell why they need so much millions of dollars, right? So they need to find new ways of engaging with the public. That I think our libraries failed to do once television and internet and all came. I think our libraries did not modernize to engage with public, so they were still relying on public to come and look for a book or a newspaper, but not really doing anything proactive. Like we never have book clubs in our libraries despite having so many books. We never had them proactively organizing a book event or something, which could have been done, because our libraries are all in very good infrastructure in heritage buildings especially, right? So I think that that was my point, that we have not continued to modernize with the time and stayed where we were. So they kind of built it, but nothing happened after that kind of issue. The second viewpoint that you had about filming, I think there are only 2-3 meetings which were short. It's just that they are intercut. So one sequence might show just one person in that meeting talking, and the next sequence, after some time, same meeting, the other person is talking, is coming. So they're not like different meetings, but the same meeting cut into different parts, is how I read it. Of course, the camera is present, and that's an eternal question. I don't know if the camera is not there, if the library people's behavior would have been different. But as we say, nothing is absolute truth in cinema, whether it's documentary or fiction. So that is true, but I mean, there's no way to hide your camera, so we don't know, right? Yeah, so that's my response to the 2 points that you made, and thank you for talking.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else wants to say anything about? Yes, Sanjay, please go ahead.
Yeah, it was actually very interesting to see that how library is used for different purposes. So, we have seen that they are also organizing talks, and they are also promoting reading habits. For example, in children, that there is one lady who has some task for the child and saying that if you don't read that book, would you like to do this task? And so obviously the child prefers reading the story. So it's like indirectly you are promoting the reading habits, and making the documents available was very important. And the library staff, they are also they have a very good knowledge. That's very important actually, which we find sometimes in Indian libraries, but not always. So sometimes you find in some rare cases a librarian who knows books, and not only that, which book is placed where, but also what is there inside the book. For young readers, it's very important because they want to know. Like in earlier days, when the books were not specified with the, I mean, you couldn't know that what is there inside the book, what is the subject of this book, you know. So I remember, like in JNU library, our librarian, he was an excellent librarian, and you will find his name on thousands of theses produced in JNU. He was Alan Malik, and he knew, like, you know, almost each book of the library, and he would go along with you happily and help you in finding out book. And also, and he used to ask students who are reading the books, and that time it was very important because the internet was not that, you know, available. So he used to ask students, those who are reading books, what is there, you know, this book is about what, and then he would write like that, you know, and then put it in computer slowly. So those researchers, they will know, you know, by reading them, whether those books are useful for them in their research work or not. So that's very important actually. For that, we need a lot of training to the library staff. And digitizing the documents. This is one of the issues discussed in the documentary, which some of our libraries are trying to do slowly. Because even in the US, they are saying, they're talking about digital divide, that there are people who are living in digitally dark area. So you have, first of all, that providing internet facilities in different areas, and then you know, by chance, if the internet facility is not available, they can directly come to the library and consult documents on the screen, which can revolutionize the research work. For example, in earlier days, when we had to find out something in the physical books, then you read all the volumes, or at least if you don't read all the volumes, then you turn pages and read, you know, like in diagonal way, the paragraphs, and find out where this book talks about this topic, you know? So you have to read volumes and volumes. But now you just do Control F, and if the document is there in the computer, you can easily find out the relevant the search word which you're looking for. So that all that is shown very well in the documentary. And besides that, to come to this conversation around the unicorn, I didn't find it very funny because there were people actually who believed in the existence of the unicorn, and this was something which was circulated by different writers. Marco Polo is one of them, and in his travel writings, he said that, you know, he had seen the unicorn. And as it happens with different travel writers, particularly with travel writers, that they are very good in copying and plagiarizing. So if one travel writer has seen some area, then another travel writer after 30 years would come and confirm, yes, it is like that. Okay, it's very common in travel writings. It sounds funny, but I have seen people almost copy even the structure of the sentences also, just to confirm that, yes, like the other traveler, like me, there was one traveler before me also who had seen it like that. Okay, so there is a tendency to confirm in travel writings. So this business of finding the unicorn was very common, and it was believed by many people. So it was a part of the social imaginary in Europe, that kind of image of the Orient, quote unquote, which was projected by such books, was part of their social imaginary. So if someone is asking about the unicorn, they might have believed in it, and they wanted to find out more information about it. So so it's well, at one level it's funny, but also it also shows that how the social imaginary is constituted. So all that was very interesting, and thanks for suggesting this film.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay, for your comments. And yeah, I mean, I think I said it was funny only because the kind of questions the librarians have to answer in this particular library is what I found funny. He has to explain that unicorn is not real animal, but there is a mention. He also mentions the first Middle English book which mentions it. So that I found funny, as in the sequence of how much work this clerk has to do, or the librarian has to do, to respond to the customer or the patron's questions. Yes, and regarding, I think, thank you for your other comments. I perfectly agree with most, and I'm sure JNU and even maybe universities like Jadavpur would have had great libraries, I'm sure, and will continue to have. It's just that I think they are mostly exclusively university libraries. That's the only challenge. I was talking more of the city libraries, which are public libraries, where irrespective of whether you are educated, literate or not, you can engage with the library as a knowledge center, is what I think what I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else would like to comment on?
I think one of the favorite sequence of mine is the picture archive. They come, one teacher has come with many young students, I think from drama school, they mentioned, where and the librarians, the people who work in that archive from the library side, introduce the archive so beautifully and talk about how Andy Warhol also used these images, etc. And they kind of encourage the students to go and check it out and what interests them, etc. And that seems like a great exercise to do with any archive, where students are encouraged to, instead of saying don't touch this, to say that you can choose any of this, look at it, and sort of trust them to handle it, care, etc., etc. So I find that sequence very interesting, because that's something we are very, even with NFAI, we know how difficult it is to get access to films. So that way, I think, that was very interesting for me to see that how proactively they are engaging with schools, colleges, to encourage them to use the archive, which is there from 1900s of years, that they have an archive of pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any other comments?
If no one is there.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Just to continue the conversation with Basav, you mentioned about Ninasam.
Yeah.
I immediately got reminded of Kannada University, Hampi. So when the new campus was built in Hampi for Kannada University, if you look at the campus, the biggest and tallest building on campus is the library. So the idea, there is a inscription, it is not a foundation laying stone, but it's an inscription. The language of that stone is also in like that. As long as the Surya and Chandra are there in the sky, it is the responsibility of the entire Kannada community to ensure that the doors of this building is not closed. So that's how Kambar envisaged it. That means the library should be open 24 hours. That was the idea, but it was never materialized. That's a different issue. And you are right in pointing out the problem in 90s. So liberalization. So with that, the funding to the public institutions drained up. So we never could have sufficient people to run the library for 24 hours in Kannada University. And today we know what is the funding situation for the universities in Karnataka. That's a different issue. So it was 90s liberalization and the state attitude towards public institutions that changed the situation completely. And of course, the middle class is a culprit in the sense it was supposed to be the vocal voice in the civil society. It never raised its voice because it was also convenient for it at that point of time, opening up certain things and making it privatized. But today, in the context of students coming back from Ukraine, Again, there is a discussion about all those issues. I don't know whether it will we'll be able to sustain the discussion, or it is only a one-off thing. We don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a. I think I find I think the one of the reasons I wanted to also show this film was that I find it very deeply disturbing that the cultural discourse in India today is really stooped to very low levels. There is no. If you switch on TV, you don't see any learned people talking. It's just random people shouting at each other, or if you see in cinema as well, there is not much not much to talk about. Whoever has the agency or the privilege to be able to go and learn abroad or do something different on their own accord are able to do something, but otherwise there is no there is no cultural discourse of literature or cinema or theater or anything, any of the art forms, I would say, in today, especially in Karnataka. It's very low. I keep hearing that Kerala is far better, but I don't know. I've never really lived in Kerala, but definitely in Karnataka, I see that it's an all-time low. So that was also one of the reasons why I wanted to show the film, because I think this function, our institutions can turn around this situation or the problem that we have in the cultural discourse if they really want to, and the civil society has to stand up and say, like, I'm member of this, can you do this? The people can ask, demand these things, and instead of demanding for temples or some religious laws, they should also demand for more educational reform, which I think is really bad situation in Karnataka today. In fact, just today, Azim Premji University brought out a report of how about 230 million students are going to be impacted in primary education because of this whole COVID issue, and government is not really talking about it as to how they will handle that issue of loss of couple of years of education for so many millions of kids, right? So we seem to be stuck in a very bad spot, and there is no real intellectual discourse also. I mean, intellectuals are seen as bad people any longer, so that's another problem. I was even in fact with Girish Kasavalli on Friday, and we were talking about exactly this problem, and how, even like, for example, Bangalore Film Festival and how it has been run, and Girish was telling me about how bad the situation is. Anyways, this is all digression. Sorry to digress.
The point in some ways of the library is also that it doesn't seem like a space where there is a particular intellectual elite which is in the forefront, but it's all like it's a space where anyone and everyone is kind of I don't know if it is the effect of the film. It's the effect of a particular kind of vision of democracy that is coming through this film, or the sense that this is what a library is meant to do, as a kind of a place of extended learning, a place of access, because so much of the discussion is around access there. So in the present age, what does one do, and how to bridge the gap, and then they go around handing out those devices which will help them to get that many hours and so on. So I think these are very crucial kind of questions in any democracy, right? So where people are in the center of the institutions which foster, nurture, nourish them. I think in that sense, I was all admiration for the film, and I was really thinking, I was kind of saying, why can't we replicate something like this here? So some kind of a long-term plan in that fashion.
Yeah, like I said, just to add the lived experience, I was so surprised that they would be allowed you to, take Godard, Fellini DVDs and all these for free. You didn't have to pay to become, borrow these DVDs from the local libraries in US. Just that level of discourse for me was like shocking, because we don't even have that kind of minimum collection of variety of medium, not just books. So that when I lived there, it was really, really surprising that you could access so much for free, and despite not being a citizen also, in a way, right? So it was all very very, very impressive, to say the least. And I think the concern there is what is evident. Again, I think like you rightly said, most of the reviews when the film came out in 2017 said that it really shows that democracy is truly alive, at least within the walls of this institution, right? So that point, your point was made by many reviews, actually. It just needs to, I think I'm probably ending up repeating myself, but it is focused on development of people intellectually. I don't mean intellectually means PhDs or something, but even people who have never had access to education, they are able to attend evening classes, like Takeshwar mentioned, in the library. So, and in that particular history class, that where she was talking about Marx and the southern ideologues of US and labor relations, if you see the people sitting in the class, they were all old and who probably had never gone to college. So that kind of access itself is amazing to be had, I think, to be available to general public. Thank you for listening. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyone else? Sridhar, Shaila, anyone else? Okay. If there's nothing else that is to be said about the film, then thank you very much, Basav, for joining the discussion today and for sharing all these ideas about the film. It was really, really one of those exhilarating, kind of films. Wow. So this is, what it should be like, kind of a film. And thanks everyone for joining in the discussion today. We'll see you all next Saturday on Talking Films online with another film for discussion. Thank you and have a good night and a good week ahead of you.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you,
patiently
Basav.
listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it was a mammoth effort to watch the film, I can understand. But that's how we are trained, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good night. Yeah.
Good night.